In Chapter 9, we will discuss the production and operations management. There are 5 learning objectives in Chapter 9. The first is to describe the current state of U.S. manufacturing and what manufacturers have done to become more competitive. 2, describe the evolution from production to operations management. 3, identify various production processes and describe techniques that improve productivity, including computer-aided design and manufacturing, flexibility manufacturing, lean manufacturing, mass customization, robotics, and 3D printing. 4, describe operations management planning issues, including facility location, facility layout, materials requirement planning, purchasing, just-in-time inventory control, and quality control. And finally, explain the use of a PERT and Gantt charts to control manufacturing processes. This slide talks about Shahid Khan that moved to the U.S. from Pakistan when he was 16 years old. He earned a degree in engineering and got a job overseeing a company called Flex and Gate. It was a aftermarket auto parts store. While he worked at Flex and Gate, he refined the production process and expanded their client base to automakers. He eventually bought that company, and he's worth about $7 billion. So this is just an example on how making the production process more efficient can really improve the business, not just from efficiency, but a profitability standpoint. And eventually, I'm sure he was rewarded well for his efforts, which allowed him to purchase the company. Here, this slide gives an example of a company that has to make a decision on where they locate their facility. So think about when I describe this facility or this company and where the facility is located, what this might company be. Can you name that company? This company conducted an extensive search for second North America headquarters that entailed $5 billion in construction and 50,000 high-tech jobs. Cities across the country began a high-stakes competition to land the facility in their area, mainly because it created so many jobs. Can you name that company? Do you know who it is? Well, if you said Amazon, you're correct. As you probably know, in the tri-state area of Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, we have a big Amazon plant here close to the airport because they're not only are they able to cater to people in the tri-state area, but they are able to get their products out through the airport very quick as well. Manufacturing in the United States has declined quite a bit since 1979, when nearly 20 million people worked in manufacturing. Approximately 12.8 million work in manufacturing as of 2019. The value of products made in the U.S. reached a record high. Technology and automation have changed the types of jobs. Now 80% of jobs in the U.S. are in the service sectors. Do you know what kind of items or companies still produce their products in the United States? Well, it's not many, but according to an article by Money Talks News, there are quite a few companies that you'll probably recognize in this list that still make their products in the U.S. even though they might outsource some of their parts from other countries. So the list included Zippo lighters, the Lodge cast iron cookware, KitchenAid mixers for all you bakers out there, Maglite flashlights, or if you like using the Tervis cups, that's one that's made here in the U.S. And finally, for all you sports fans, the Wilson footballs are still made here in the U.S. This slide represents the leading goods manufactured still in the United States. The first one are chemicals, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, soaps, paints, and fertilizers with a value of $340 billion which the lowest one on the list is transportation equipment like cars, planes, trains, and ships at $148 billion. But there in between, you've got computer products, and then processed foods or beverages and tobacco, etc. Here's another slide that you might find interesting. The slide represents the top manufacturers based on revenues according to Industry Week's 2019 list of the 500 largest publicly held U.S. manufacturing companies. So ranking number 1 is General Electric, or GE. So you might be able to identify them as aerospace industry or the energy industry. Ranking number 2 is Whirlpool. They manufacture appliances. Down at the bottom, we've got number 9 at Lennox International, whose industry is climate control. And the final one, number 10, is Spectrum Brands, which is residential products. There's an interesting case in the text. It is regarding Tesla, and it's called Wilbat's Bombs and Regulations Stall Tesla's German Production Venture. But it talks about how Elon Musk wanted to build a plant in Germany as quick as he did in Shanghai. Unfortunately, the problem was all the legal regulations required in Germany versus Shanghai. But you can read all about it on page 223 of the text of chapter 9. But it is interesting to think about the different regulations that affect companies differently in each region or country that they might want to build in and manufacture. The famous economist Joseph Schumpeter believed in continuous improvement and discussed capitalism as a force for creative destruction. If the United States is to remain competitive, the nation as a whole must continually innovate, eschewing old inefficient industries in favor of capital-intensive, knowledge-driven industry. Although American industry is more productive than ever, it faces increased competition from all over the world. U.S. producers must compete with China and Germany, mighty manufacturing firms, as well as expanding enterprises in Asia, like areas of South Korea, Vietnam, and India. Many foreign manufacturers depend on the U.S.'s technology and concept to increase effectiveness and efficiencies in their regions. Although, even though they do depend on the U.S. for technology and concepts, there's a lot of other innovation going on around the world as well. Service providers will also need to step up their game as the sector becomes increasingly crowded. Improving the efficiency of services isn't as easy as it sounds. Just like with you, if you choose a certain service provider and you want service quick, sometimes if they can't give it to you quick enough, you might go someplace else to have a better outlook on that you spend doing certain tasks. It's also important for service to maintain close relationships. Suppliers and other companies in order to supply customer needs. Finally, like their counterparts, the manufacturing service providers must continuously improve if they want to maintain a competitive edge. Production is the creation of finished goods and services using the factors of production, which are land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and knowledge. Production has historically meant manufacturing, and the term production management has described the activities that helped firms create goods. Operations management is a term that is used in both manufacturing and the service organizations. Operation management is a specialized area in management that converts or transforms resources, including human resources like technical skills and innovation, into goods and services. It includes inventory management, quality control, production scheduling, follow-up services, and more. In a service-based setting, like a college or a university, operation management takes inputs such as information, professors, supplies, buildings, etc., and creates that service that transforms students into educated people. It does this through teaching and explanation. So in the company that I work for, which is a services industry, we do very much of the same thing as the example on the universities. So we are a contract research organization. We provide the main service of managing clinical trials. So we're the go-between the the drug companies and the doctors that administer the trials. But just like the text indicated, it includes inventory management. And for us at CTI, our inventory is our people. It's because we provide a service. So in a way that we inventory our people is by tracking their time that they spend on billable projects. And then we turn that into revenue. Operations management in the service industry is all about creating the best experience for your customers who are receiving the service. Service businesses have tripled the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, in the past few years. For example, places like the Hilton use an AI-backed interview platform in its recruiting process. So these AI-backed systems will allow the recruiters to dial in on certain qualities they want their potential employees to have and choose applicants based on the information they put in the system. Domino's, they also use an AI tool that helps them supervise their pizza makers in Australia or New Zealand. In short, pleasing customers by anticipating their needs has become the quality standard for companies like Hilton and Domino's, as it has for other service businesses. But knowing customer needs and satisfying them are two different things. Operation management acts as a bridge between these concepts and allowing companies to turn their ideas into actual goods and services. So this slide just kind of highlights how hotels may have changed their customer experience over the years. Now, you may not remember a time where there was no internet. However, back when I was on the lecture circuit, when I worked at the University of Cincinnati, we used to do a lot of traveling and teaching people how to use best practices when it came to dealing with federal grants and how to manage them. And when we used to go into hotels, a lot of times some of the older hotels did not have internet access. Or you might have had internet access, but you had to pay a huge fee just to be able to use it. And there sometimes when I submitted my expense report, they wouldn't even cover the internet charge, not thinking that it was something that was necessary at the time. They felt like it was more for personal use. However, that really wasn't the case. But as things have changed throughout time, more and more people that travel for business definitely need internet. Not only do business people need it, but from a personal standpoint, if you're traveling with family, now everything's run off the internet. So they've started to change how rooms are set up. They're set up for the ability to do business while traveling, whether it's for business or personal. But think of some of the ways things may have changed in hotels just due to COVID. So as you can see a picture there on the screen, people may have traveled to other cities for business, but then had to conduct meetings from inside their hotel room in other parts of the world in order to conduct business. While traveling to places that they were allowed to trade or to travel to and be in person. So they're kind of multitasking there on one trip. But you can see in the picture on the slide that they have a whole like desk set up and a nice comfortable chair in order to make sure that people are comfortable working within their rooms. So, but still, even if you're not a traveler, this would be something that would be interesting to me personally, in addition to business travel. Let's review. By 1979, nearly 20 million people worked in manufacturing. However, the number of Americans employed by factory has steadily dropped year after year. By 2019, the number dropped to 12.8 million people. However, the value of products made in the United States has reached a record high due to advancements in technology and automation. American manufacturers must keep up with the latest production techniques, no matter if they are developed in the US or in another country. In the service sector, companies will need to focus on providing customers with quality care and attention, and will need to maintain close relationships with their suppliers. In manufacturing, operations management transforms raw materials, human resources, parts, supplies, tools, and other resources into goods. In the service sector, operations management focuses on creating a good experience for those who use the service. Common sense and some experience have already taught you a lot about production processes. For example, you know what it takes to write a term paper or to do your homework. An example of that is that you'll need your potential book or electronic book. You'll need instructions, and then you'll need time to write the paper, review it, edit it, and then turn it in. So that's your whole process for developing that. Also, the same is true of production process and industry. It uses inputs to produce outputs. Production adds value or utility to materials or process. Form utility is the value producers add to material in the creation of finished goods and services, such as transforming silicone into computer chips or putting services together to create a vacation package. Manufacturers use several different processes to produce goods. Process manufacturing is physically or chemically changing materials. And as it talks about in your book, I think this is a great example of how process manufacturing happens. I mean, just think about when you boil an egg, how it physically changes what the inside of the egg looks like. Similarly, process manufacturing can turn sand into glass or computer chips. The assembly process puts together components to make a product. So for instance, if you're making breakfast, eggs, toast, and coffee would be that assembly process that moves into the end product called breakfast. This slide is a figure that can also be found in your book on page 226. It highlights the production process. It shows that the process consists of taking factors of production, which are the inputs in the brown box, like land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and knowledge, and using those inputs to produce goods, services, and ideas. Planning, routing, and scheduling, which is in the green box, means to accomplish the objective or the output. So as you can see, the final box of outputs would be that goods and services. Andrew Grove is the former chairman of the computer chip manufacturer at Intel, and his basic production requirements say to build and deliver products in response to the demands of the customer at the scheduled delivery time, to provide an acceptable quality level, and to provide everything at the lowest cost possible. This slide on cake production is a fun one. I like to bake and design cakes, mainly just as a hobby and, you know, for my friends and family, just to put a smile on their faces for different occasions. But when you think about it, I mean, you're going through those motions of the production process. So we'll call this cake production as it does on the slide. When you start to decide to make a cake like the one on the slide, you have that input. So you're going to have your knowledge on how to put a cake like that together. So you'll start planning with that knowledge. And then you go through the process of actually developing, your time that it's going to take to make this cake. So if you have a delivery date of 2 weeks from now, you're going to have to, because there's a lot of work that goes into a cake like that. I'd say 12, 15 hours. So you have to plan by baking the cake because it's going to have time to cool. The fondant that goes on the cake also needs time to be planned so it's applied correctly. There's gum paste that's used on that cake, also needs time to dry once you've put it into the form that you want it in, like the little flowers on the cake. And then you need to have time to put the whole cake together. You put the fondant on, then you start stacking it, and eventually it gets to the form of that big birthday cake that it is. But it's just, that's the final output, is that good. And you're providing a service to develop that cake for your person. So just think about when you're thinking about the assembly process, all the different steps it takes to put a cake like that. So can you think of something else that you do that you might be able to apply production or assembly processes to? We talked about earlier just about doing a book report or writing a paper. So think about how the production and assembly works in real life. Production processes are either continuous or intermittent. A continuous process is one in which production runs turn out finished goods over time. As a chef, you could have a conveyor belt that continuously lowers eggs into boiling water for 3 minutes and then lifts them out. It usually makes more sense when responding to specific customer orders to use intermittent process. Here, the production run is short, it's 1 or 2 eggs, and the producer adjusts machine frequently to make different products, like for instance, an oven for a bakery or a toaster in a diner. Today, many manufacturers use intermittent processes. Computers, robots, and flexible manufacturing process allows firms to turn out custom-made goods almost as fast as mass-produced goods. Efficiency is something you're going to hear whether you're in a production industry or a services industry. It's important to make sure that processes are efficient because it directly translates into cost savings, because the more efficient the production is, the less expense it is to have people to manage those processes for production, which eventually trickles down into a better profit margin. Efficiency is going to be something you hear throughout your life personally and professionally. It benefits you to be more efficient when you do things. Say, for instance, I say all the time to my daughter, would you go pick up some of the items on the floor that are yours and take them up to her room? Well, when she was little, she used to pick up one, take it to her room, then she would come back and get another, even though I would try to direct her to get all of them at once because it saves time. Well, eventually she caught on, and now she tries to put as much in her arms as she can, so she has to make less trips. So that's just one example of efficiency. For me, when where I work, one of the ways we've become more efficient is with time is by automating some of our activities. For instance, we used to do a manual Excel budget. In the Excel, it's a lot more time put in when you're developing budgets in Excel because you have to have several different Excel spreadsheets, and there's a lot of room for error, which means that eventually maybe some of your numbers might not be right within your overall budget proposal. So what we did was we got a cloud, an ERP software that allowed us to work with people all over the world when developing our budgets, and everything's automated. It calculates based on personnel how much our health insurance for the company is going to cost, calculates by employee how many Microsoft licenses we're going to need, or how many computers for new hires we might need. So instead of having to manually do that, whether it's in your head on an Excel spreadsheet or on a calculator, the system automatically generates that information. So we have details of cost within an instant. So that's just an idea of why efficiency is so important. And then on this slide, it just really represents the production efficiency of products that we all know and probably love, even though they may not be good for us. First one is Krispy Kreme donuts. There's 5,208 Krispy Kreme donuts produced in a minute. Chips Ahoy cookie, 4,000 cookies a minute. And then if we drop down to Lifesavers, 100 rolls a minute, which is crazy to me, how quickly. But we're not talking about just one plant. We're probably talking about several. But it's just interesting to see how many can be made so quickly, just based on automation and efficiencies that are developed as, you know, a result of that automation. The ultimate goal of operations management is to provide high-quality goods and services instantaneously in response to customer demand. As you'll see in this book, traditional organizations were simply not designed to be responsive to customer needs over the years. Rather, they were designed to make goods efficiently and inexpensively. The idea was mass production was to make a large number of limited variety of product at the lowest possible cost. Over the years, low costs often came at an expense of quality and flexibility. Furthermore, suppliers didn't always deliver when they said they would, so manufacturers had to carry large inventories of raw materials and components to keep producing. This was considered inefficient, which made U.S. companies vulnerable to foreign competitors who were using more advanced production techniques and less expensive labor. As a result of new global competitions, companies had to make a wide variety of high-quality, customer-designed products at a low cost. So, something had to change, which ended up making the U.S. come up with other ideas on how to be more competitive. So some of those ideas were computer-aided design and manufacturing, flexible manufacturing, lean manufacturing, mass customization, and so on. One development that has changed production techniques is the use of computers to design products. These are called computer-aided design, or CAD. CAD businesses ranging from construction companies to car makers to video game designers depend on 3D modeling software to create new products. The next part of the process will be to bring computers directly into production process with computer-aided manufacturing called CAM. CAD and CAM, which is the use of both computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing, makes it possible to custom design products to meet the needs of small markets with very little increase in cost. CAD can greatly improve productivity for businesses. In the past, CAD machines couldn't talk to CAM. Today, that's changed. The software program unite both of the CAD and CAM together. The final result is called Computer Integrated Manufacturing, or CIM. When companies use CIM, computers control the entire production process. Although the software is expensive, it can dramatically reduce the time needed to program machines and increase production. So you really have to do a cost analysis when it comes to the CIM to see how it's going to make everything more efficient and provide a better profit for the organization. This slide just illustrates the 3D CAD tools that allow their designers to create that high-tech or the double-layered face mask prototypes without constantly sewing and trying on potential new models. Can you think of other ways that CAD tools might offer smaller manufacturing companies? If you want, take a look on the internet and do a little research and see how these CAD tools might benefit the smaller manufacturers. A part of the production process might be using flexible manufacturing. Flexible manufacturing means designing machines to do multiple tasks so they can produce a variety of products. So Allen Bradley, they use flexible manufacturing to build motor starters. Orders come in daily, and within 24 hours of the company's machines and robots manufacture, test, and package the starters, which are untouched by human hands. It's so flexible that managers can include a special order, even a single item, in the assembly without slowing down the whole process. Lean manufacturing is something that I've heard more and more in business processes, especially with manufacturing companies, because the idea of lean manufacturing is to use less of what it takes to manufacture something like human effort, space, tools, etc., and to develop that product. Basically, what it's saying is a company becomes lean by continuously increasing its capacity to produce those high quality products while decreasing its need for resources, which in the end gives the company a higher profit. To customize means to make a unique product or provide a specific service to a specific person or individual. Although at one time it seemed impossible to do mass customization, which means tailoring products to meet the needs of a large number of individual customers, it's now practiced widely. More and more companies are learning to customize their product. Think about fashion. Think about shoes. If we think about how Nike customized shoes that you can go online and design on your own, that's another example of what mass customization means. Mass customization also exists for the service sector. You can think about insurance companies that use the latest computer software and hardware to sell customized risk management plans. It's much easier to customize design service programs than to custom make goods because there's no fixed tangible good to adapt to. Each customer can specify what he or she wants within the limits of the service organization, limits that seem to be ever widening. So for the service industry that I work for, just some ideas on how we customize our products are for a full service clinical trial management, we might be working on project management, which is basically managing the whole project. Regulatory, which means working to make sure the individual sites or doctors that are doing the clinical trial are managing it properly. So that would be called site management. Also working through the data, called data management. So we're gathering all that data and putting it together and then looking at all the statistics from that data and eventually taking that information and giving it to the FDA to let them know, is this a safe drug? What kind of side effects might have occurred and so on. We also might provide medical services from medical directors. If there's some safety concerns, we provide that kind of a service as well. We provide report writing and so on. So the list goes on. So when a customer comes to us and says, look, we want you to do this project for us, but we only have, say, $1 million, which seems like a lot, but in drug company world, it's not very much. But when they come to you and say, but I need this to happen with my budget of $1 million. So basically you tailor your services to see what's important to your customer and what's important to developing this drug in order to get it to the FDA, and what services can we provide within that that budget of $1 million. So that's how it would be customized for them. So we might take out the data management or the statistics, or say, for instance, the pharmaceutical company might have their own medical directors that can provide that medical service and so on. So it's kind of a little bit of a give and take in order to get that custom service based on the budget of the customer. Industrial robotics can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with great precision. Mass customization is no problem for robotics. Robots have completely changed manufacturing by improving productivity while also reducing the number of jobs available to humans. So that's a sticking point for most people in society. Along with assembly line jobs in factories, robots have begun to take over some of the services in business as well. I had mentioned earlier how at my company we use a customizable software that allows us to do our financial planning and analysis using AI. But we've seen that in other service industries as well. For instance, Wall Street financial analysts have had to start competing for jobs for AI-enabled robots as well. So it's interesting how the world has come full circle. I mean, the only problem with AI is they don't have the emotional intelligence that a real person does. And in today's world, not just employees, but also customers are looking for that as a perk of doing business with someone. This slide is just an example of a case in your text on page 229 if you want to go in and read the whole case on it. But it just talks about how robots are adapting in the world just because they're able to do repetitive tasks that are really kind of a mundane and boring for humans. So as you can see, the picture on the screen is flipping burgers. So anyway, if you want to learn more about it, go to page 229 of your text and read about it. It's called Meet Your New Workmate, R2-D2. And if there are any Star Wars fans out there, it's a clever take. One of the most exciting production processes to emerge in recent years is 3D printing. During advanced procedure, also known as additive manufacturing, a product is created one layer at a time by a nozzle similar to those found on inkjet printers. 3D printing has grown rapidly over the past 5 years, driven by rapid technological developments. Expectations are that 3D printing could grow to a market reaching $35 billion by 2024. It's less than 2 years away. Most companies use 3D printing to create prototype models or molds for other industrial projects due to their significantly reduced costs. But experts claim that it won't be long until 3D printing revolutionizes the production of all sorts of items. So I know my uncle has one of the 3D printers, and of course it's nothing like you might see with a company that's developing a prototype, but it's a small one and something that he's done, in order to let my aunt decorate around the house is to make little holiday type trinkets that she can put around the house. He's also developed a few things for my dad. So he likes to shoot his gun at the range, and he made a little, I guess we'll call it a widget that allowed him to load the bullets in his gun a little easier because his hands shake so much, so it's a little bit easier. And he, just as a side note, he does do this as a hobby, and he does it only at the gun range. He does not shoot anywhere where he might harm somebody. So it's a completely controlled environment. This slide gives an example of how 3D printing could be used for so many more things than just prototypes. So on the slide, it shows how a 26-meter bridge, concrete bridge in Shanghai was printed over several stages and connected together. Some of the ways that I can think of 3D printing has been used in the past is I've seen on TV where they've printed a house with a 3D printer. I watch a lot of shows on TV like crime shows, and I've seen where they've used a 3D printer to recreate a crime scene. So it's interesting to see how 3D printing works in so many different areas of the world or industries. Part of the production process is using sensing, measurement, and process control. Sensors can detect the moment anything goes wrong. So if we think about in a particular kind of production plant where you can't have humidity go above a certain level, it can track when that goes wrong. I know a lot of manufacturing plants that are international, say in Asia, these sensors can track where a product is at any point in the manufacturing all the way through the process of shipping. And when it actually gets to another point of contact, like the store that ordered the particular product. So it's interesting to see how the industries have come so far. Companies are also using nano manufacturing. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. So nano manufacturing means to be able to manipulate materials on a molecular or even atomic scale. It's interesting to see all this stuff coming about. Let's review. Form utility is the value producers add to materials and the creation of finished goods and services. For example, when a company transforms raw steel into a body for an automobile, they are creating that form of utility. Process manufacturing physically or chemically changes materials, such as turning sand into glass or computer chips. The assembly process puts together components to create a product. For example, cars are made through an assembly process that puts together the frame, the engine, and other parts. Continuous process involves long production runs, turning out finished goods over time. For example, a plant makes plastic cups and it runs continuous through the process. Rather than using long runs, an intermittent process involves short runs that responds directly to specific customer orders. An example of this process would include manufacturers of men's custom business suits. The integration of CAD and CAM is referred to as Computer Integrated Manufacturing, or CIM. Mass customization is the process of tailoring products to meet the demands of a large number of individual customers. One example of the process is Nike ID, which allows customers to design athletic shoes by choosing from a variety of colors and designs. If you're interested on how this works, you can go to Nike, but you can also look at the web address NikeID at nike.com that's here on the screen. When you think about operations management planning, one of the things you got to plan for is having the facility located in the perfect geographic location for company operations. So for instance, if you are going to be shipping to the US, is it cheaper to build a facility in the US, or is it so that way you can ship it out quickly and get it to your people or to the other organizations that need your product in order to make another product? Or is it better and cheaper to put it overseas in Europe or even in Asia? Or does it make sense to have a facility in every one of those geographic locations? You really need to find a site that makes sense for all the company's needs and to make sure that you're getting your product out to the consumer. Obviously, the best convenience when you think about facility location is being able to get to the product to the customer without them ever having to leave home to get it. A rising number of businesses are online, which means those brick and mortar retailers must find great locations in order to get you in there because, like I just said, the ultimate convenience is using your phone, ordering online, and having it delivered either that same day or within a day or two, and then having the ability to ship it back without losing any of the purchase price. So it's really about convenience, whether you're the company that's looking for the location or the consumer that's getting that end product. So as far as selecting that facility location, there's so many things that you have to consider before you make your decision on a site. You have to take into account the availability of qualified workers, access to transportation, suppliers, customers, laws and regulation, and taxes. So if you're a company that thinks they're going to go to Asia because they're going to save money, they really have to be strategic in the country that they're going to select. Because if you go to countries that are less regulated, there's more risk. So there's more risk for loss of your technology. The country could come in and take all of your product, development. They could fine you. They could, not let you keep the site that you purchased, so you may never have ownership if in a particular country. So at any time, the government could come in and close you down. So there's just so many reasons why you have to be really strategic in picking a site for your organization. Other things to consider with facility locations for manufacturing of a new location are the cost for labor, and again, the resources that are available. So that way you can make sure you have everything you need, whether it's transported in or it's from, local sourcing. The time it takes to get your product to market, which includes the transportation, and then that proximity to suppliers or customers in order to get it there quick. The quality of life for your employees. So you want to make sure that whatever location you do pick, there aren't high crime rates or high cost of living. You also have to think about natural disasters. So if you pick a point within the world for your site, is there a lot of natural disasters like hurricanes or tsunamis or anything that might jeopardize not just your business but your employees? And then also having the ability to recruit your workforce and then be able to be trained, and then also retrained, because things change, so you're constantly adapting to that. I won't be going into details on this slide particularly. You can read it more on page 232, but basically talks about making ethical decisions based on whether you're loyal to your customer or to your profitability, or the bottom line, as they might call it. So if you want to read a little bit more about that in the text, feel free. Many rapidly growing companies do very little production themselves. Instead, they outsource engineering, design, manufacturing, and other tasks to companies such as Flex and Sanmina that specialize in those functions. They create relationships with suppliers online, making operations management an interfirm process in which companies work closely together to design, produce, and ship products to customers. Manufacturing companies are developing online strategies that will enable them to others to compete and effectively in the future. These changes are having a dramatic effect on operations managers as they adjust from one firm system to an interfirm environment. So rather than relatively stable systems that companies can solely control, they must now deal with an environment that is constantly changing and evolving. In the future, facility location may not be as important. IT, or information technology, which is the computers and software, Wi-Fi, email, voicemail, everything you need in order to communicate, is giving employees increased flexibility with the ability to choose what location they want to live, and it doesn't necessarily have to be close to the employer. So what IT has given the ability, and this is what is called telecommuting, where you can work wherever you have a computer. This way, companies don't have to be near sources of labor anymore, as long as they can recruit the correct people with the right resources and experience in order to do the job. Another incentive to locate in a particular city or state might be a financial incentive by the government that might relieve them of taxes. But so for instance, if they did relocate to this other area, using the telecommute option where there might not be as many people to recruit to work would be perfect. Since the coronavirus, uh, companies have begun to have different layouts in their facilities by giving them open workspaces. That way there's safe distances in between people and plenty of space, so that way the employees can collaborate safely. Do you think that the environment that's showed on this slide is an effective way to keep workers safe and productive? Facility layout is the physical arrangement of resources, including people, to most efficiently produce goods and provide services for customers. Facility layouts depend greatly on the process that are being performed. For services like retail, the layout is usually designed to help the consumer find and buy things. Other service-oriented organizations, such as hospital, use layouts that are more efficient, just like manufacturers do. Many companies are moving from an assembly line layout in which workers do only a few tasks at a time to a modular layout in which teams are working in combination to produce more complex units for the final product. When working on a major project, such as a bridge or an airplane, companies use fixed position layout that allows workers to congregate around the product to be completed. A process layout is one in which similar equipment and functions are grouped together. The order in which the product visits a function depends on the design of the item. As you can see from the figure on the screen, the first example is one that is called a product layout, or also known as the assembly line layout. With the assembly line layout, you can see that each part of the production, there are small changes. As you might remember from the last slide, the production in an assembly line layout, the workers would only complete a few tasks at a time, which you can see, which each part of the production of that truck, there's only a few things completed at each segment. In the second example, the process layout is used to serve different customer needs. For example, similar equipment and functions are grouped together. Really, the order depends on the design of the item. In the figure on this slide, it shows the module layout, or also known as the cellular layout. The planning and production can accommodate changes in design or customer demand. As you can see from the figure, there's a lot of adaptability with this module layout because the system allows for quick changes, like the use of drills and sanders for one particular product, or it can change for a different combination of tools like drills and lathes for a different product, or even the same product just with some customizations. In the figure on this slide, it shows a fixed position layout, which is planning that works by scheduling different types of work operations at different times. For example, if you're building a house, the contractor or general manager would schedule all the items that need to be completed before the roof was put on in order to ensure that the project isn't held up because something was left out. The MRP is a computer-based operations management system that uses sales forecasts to make sure materials and services are in the right place at the right time. A newer version of the MRP was developed, and it's called the Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP, which is that system or computerized system that combines all of the divisions of a firm, like their finance, HR, order fulfillment, etc., and they put it all into a single database in order to do their forecasts. Purchasing is the function in a company that searches for the quality products that are needed in order for the company to manufacture their goods or provide services. So something that a purchasing department might do is go out and look for the best prices, or maybe the company prides themselves in working with small business instead of big corporations. So the purchasing department would provide a list of small businesses that might be able to supply them, the right services or material in order to get the job done. But then they also negotiate the prices to ensure that they're able to make their products or give services in the most efficient way possible. In the past, it was a little harder to go out and negotiate good prices. Since the internet came along, it's really transformed the way the purchasing department has done business, because instead of actually physically or directly contacting these companies, they can go online and find the best prices with the quickest delivery, or there might be lists or databases full of small businesses that also can provide the same products at the same price or maybe a little bit higher, but then the company's able to support those small businesses like they wish. A just-in-time system makes sure that the right materials are in the right place at the right time at the cheapest cost to meet both the customer and production needs. While the benefits of the just-in-time system are obvious, what could be some of the drawbacks? Well, for a company that needs to get a rush order out, if you don't have inventory already in stock, then just-in-time might cause you to not be able to satisfy a customer's needs right away. Quality control in a business is integral to making sure that a product is leaving the manufacturing plant or even a services organization and going out to the customer with the least amount of defects. So the customer is getting what they paid for. They're not getting defective products. Companies have turned to the use of modern quality control standards such as the Six Sigma. The Six Sigma quality sets a benchmark for 3.4 defects per million opportunities and detects potential problems to prevent their occurrence. This is important to a company that makes potentially 4 million transactions a day, like some banks. Other types of quality control might be statistical quality control, or SQC, which is the process that some managers use to continually monitor all phases of production process to ensure quality is being built into their products from the beginning. There's also another quality control called statistical process control. This is the process of testing statistical samples of product components at each stage of the production and plotting the test results on a graph. Managers can see and correct any deviation from quality standards. Making sure products meet the standards all along the production process reduces the need for quality control inspection at the end because mistakes are caught much earlier. SQC and SPC save companies much time and money. There's several other types of quality control, but these would be the ones that would be more directed towards the manufacturing project. There are awards that companies can apply for the standard of overall quality. One of them is called the Baldrige Award. The Baldrige Award was created in 1987 to promote standards for overall quality in the following areas: manufacturing, services, small business, education, and healthcare. The award was named after Malcolm Baldrige, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. ISO is the world's largest developer and publisher of international standards. The purpose of the ISO is to form a bridge between the public and private sectors. ISO is based in Switzerland. The ISO 9001 is the common name given to quality management and assurance standards. The ISO 14001 is a collection of the best practices for managing an organization's impact on the environment. Managers must always consider customers and the impact on customers' ability to use the company's services and to communicate about their needs. Other criteria that needs to be considered includes labor costs, availability of resources, access to transportation, the proximity to customers, suppliers, crime rates, the quality of life for employees, and the cost of living, just to mention a few. Material Requirement Planning, or MRP, is a computer-based operations management system that uses sales forecasts to make sure needed parts and materials are available at the right time and place. Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP, is a newer version of the MRP, which combines the computerized functions of all divisions and subsidiaries of the firm into a single integrated software program that uses a single database. One major expense in the production process is the holding of parts. The goal of just-in-time inventory is to eliminate or reduce that cost. Just-in-time inventory systems keep a minimum of inventory on the premises and only delivers parts just as they are needed on the factory floor. Six Sigma is a quality control standard that sets a benchmark of no more than 3.4 defects per million opportunities. The Baldrige Award was created in 1987 to promote a standard for overall quality in the following areas: manufacturing, services, small business, and healthcare. The award was named after Malcolm Baldrige and the late U.S. Secretary of Commerce. The International Organization for Standardization, or ISO, is a worldwide federation of national standards bodies from more than 140 countries. The non-governmental organization establishes global measures for the quality of individual products. ISO 9001 is the common name given to quality management and assurance standards, while ISO 14001 is a collection of the best practices for managing an organization's environmental impact. PERT is the Program Evaluation Review Technique developed in the 1950s with the construction of the Navy's Polaris submarine project. The PERT is a method of analyzing the tasks involved in completing a given project, estimating the time needed to complete the task, and identifying the minimum time needed to complete the total project. The steps involved with PERT are first, analyzing and sequencing tasks. Then secondly, you're going to estimate the time needed for each task and then for the overall total for the task. Then you're going to draw a PERT, which is a network illustrating the first two steps. Then you'll identify that critical path, and the critical path is the sequence of tasks that takes the longest to complete. And you'll see this on the next slide that illustrates the critical paths and analysis of the PERT. This slide is in figure 9.3 is also in your text, but the slide shows PERT, the chart for a music video. It shows the minimum amount of time it will take to produce the video in 15 weeks. To get to that number, you add the week it takes to pick a star and a song to the 4 weeks to design a set, the 2 weeks to purchase set materials, the 6 weeks to construct the set, the week of rehearsals, the final week when the video's made. That's the critical path. Any delay in the process will delay the final video. Henry Gantt created the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is a bar graph showing the production managers what projects are being worked on and in what stage they are in at any given time. It is a great tool because it allows managers to determine which tasks are on time, which are behind, and that way they can make adjustments in order to stay on schedule. The Gantt chart is the forerunner to PERT. A Gantt chart enables a production manager to see at a glance when projects are scheduled to be completed and what the status is for now. For example, the doll's heads and bodies should be completed before the clothing is sewn, as you can see on this chart, but they could be a little late as long as everything is ready for the assembly line in week 6. The chart shows that at the end of week 3, the dolls' bodies are ready, but the heads are about a half a week behind. When preparing for your future career, there are so many different opportunities that are available in operations management in both manufacturing and the services industry. So what's important for you as you're seeking a career potentially in these areas is to make sure you keep an eye on future trends and have those skills that you need in order to work in a highly automated factory. Let's review. So part of the review you can do on your own by drawing a PERT chart. And you can find examples of that in your text in figure 9.3 of the text, and that's on page 237. But also think about the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is a scheduling mechanism used by manufacturers for measuring production progress. The chart will give management a clear idea of the status of the project and how much has been completed at any given time.